Oh man, we are back. Okay, so here's the deal. So I did a poll recently asking you guys what the video that you wanted to be next was, and you guys chose megas from past generations. I'm not doing videos on the new megas that came out in the game just because we don't know what their abilities are yet. And the issue is if you don't know the abilities of some of the new megas, it can totally change the tier list within a few months, and I just don't feel like redoing a video on that tier list again and having to go back on what I said. So I figured it would be best if we speak about old megas where we are well aware of what their stats are, what their abilities are, and so on and so forth. So there's no question about how they will do in the future games. Although with that being said, the new megas, from what I've seen based on Pokemon Showdown and from what people are talking about, they do have a lot better stat distributions than the older megas do. But with that being said, there are still some older megas that are still going to be around and still be really, really strong. So this is going to be like a top 10 list of old mega Pokemon from past generations and how they will fare in the upcoming games Pokemon Champions. This list, it's not necessarily going to be based on just only the individual strength of the mega, but it's also going to be based on the fact of like how well do these mega Pokemon pair up against new Pokemon that have been added to the game, and how well do they pair up on a team with some of these new Pokemon, just because that alone does change around the list from prior generations, because back in like 2018, 2019, Mega Salamence was the best Mega, and now that's not really the case anymore with these old returning Megas. There's actually a new Mega that is the best. Before we get started, we're going to just do some honorable mentions. If you're a Mega Pokemon that you really liked, wasn't in the honorable mentions, and it's not on the top 10 list, I apologize. I'm just doing it based on my knowledge and my experience of playing the games, because I have played in generations where Megas were used as the main mechanic in VGC. So for the honorable mentions, we're going to mention Tyranitar. Mega Tyranitar was actually alright when it was used back in the day. It's pretty nice just because it gets huge stat boosts, specifically to its attack and then defenses. It gets a little bit of a speed boost, and the thing is, the way people would run Mega Tyranitar is that it got access to Dragon Dance. So people would do like a Dragon Dance set, go Jolly, and then just start clicking Rock Slide. With that being said, though, it does have a really, really poor typing, which kind of holds it back a bit, but I figured I'll mention it just because it has been used to some success. Mega Blaziken is another one. It gets access to Speed Boost. It can be used both as a physical or a special attacker. However, you more than likely want to go as a physical attacker on it. There are wasted stat points in the special attack that could have been used in its defenses, so it is relatively frail, which is unfortunate. But it does get access to Speed Boost, which is a really, really good ability. You got a Speed Boost at the end of every single turn, and that can be kind of a big deal with some of the Pokemon added to the game now, just because there are a lot of pieces that are really, really fast, like Chien-Pao, like Fluttermane, and so on and so forth. So figured I'll mention that. I want to mention Mega Gardevoir. Mega Gardevoir was very good back in 2015. It was also pretty decent to my knowledge in like 2018, but it started to kind of fall through the cracks a little bit just because it was competing with other Tapus at the time. And then the thing is, it doesn't really have great physical defense. It has a great special attack and a great special defense. But the other thing is, like, the way people would run Gardevoir is that they typically would go with Trick Room on it, but that kind of is an issue just because its speed stat is actually, like, pretty decent. 100 is, like, relatively fast. I mean, nowadays it's not, like, the fastest thing ever, but it still is pretty good. So there are kind of wasted stat points there, and it is very physically frail, so you kind of need an Intimidator on the team. And then to also add on top of that, now it is competing with things like Fluttermane for the Fairy type on your team, and just being able, like, having to compete with Fluttermane as the premier Fairy type on a team is not really great for it, but I figured I'll mention it just because it had past success. Mega Swampert's another one. Mega Swampert actually gets access to Swift Swim. For those of you that don't know how that ability works, it gives you a it basically doubles your speed when you're in the rain. It has really nice bulk with 100 HP, 110 defense, 110 special defense, and then a really nice attack with 150. The thing is, however, its speed is lowered, and it is kind of dependent on, its speed is low, and it's really kind of dependent on the rain to get those big speed boosts. But now some of the Pokemon are so fast nowadays that even with the speed being doubled in rain, there still are certain Pokemon that will outspeed you just with a one-time speed boost. So Yeah, and also the other thing about Swampert is that it does have a poor typing into obviously grass types, and there have been a lot of really good grass types added the last 2 generations, like Rillaboom, like the Ogerpon forms. Brute Bonnet just won the World Championship, if my knowledge is correct, so yeah, it's kind of going to have an issue with that, but I just figured I'll mention it just because it is the best Rain Abuser out of any of the Megas. The other one is Scizor. Scizor actually won an international championship back in 2018. If my knowledge is correct, if I remember correctly, I think it was on like a rain team. But the biggest problem with Scizor is that it is 4 times weak to fire types, and obviously Incineroar is, still around. It still is really, really popular. And then also Chi-Yu was added to the game and Ogerpon Hearthflame, which all just kind of give it major issues. So obviously like that's going to be having problems, but it was successful at one point in time. Figured it was worth a mention. And then the last one will be Gyarados. I cannot spell Gyarados. Gyarados has a really good attack stat, relatively good bulk, okay speed. It's kind of middling. The thing that really holds Gyarados back, though, is that Water Dark as a defensive typing isn't really great. You're weak to Electric, you're weak to Grass, you're weak to Fairy, Fighting. You're also, I think, weak to Bug as well. But the thing is, it's like, with that poor just typing in general defensively, it makes it a little bit tough to switch in and out of games. And there is base Gyarados, which gets Intimidate, but at some point you are going to have to Mega Evolve to get these like massive stat boosts. But I figured I'll give it a mention just because it did win Worlds back in 2014 on Sage and Park's team. With that being said, for the 10th best Mega coming in, I actually think Mega Venusaur is going to be pretty decent. I don't know why I typed Mega. I should just type Venusaur. Yeah, Mega Venusaur, like when you look at its stats, it isn't anything like special. Like it has like okay HP, good defense, good special defense, pretty good special attack. There are wasted points in attack, and then speed is kind of middling. But what actually I think makes it good is just how it pairs up against some of the new Pokemon added these last 2 generations. Like it has a really, really good matchup into Urshifu Rapid Strike because of the grass typing and good physical bulk, and then you could do a lot of damage back with like Giga Drain or something, which is a pretty big deal. It also has the poison typing, which really helps it against things like Flutter Mane. Flutter Mane is going to be another really popular Pokemon, so it's not that necessarily Mega Venusaur got stronger. It's just more so the fact that like some of the pieces added to the game, it just happens to match up very well against because of its typing and coverage. The other thing is it also has access to Thick Fat. For those of you that don't know how Thick Fat works, it halves the damage of fire and ice type moves, and obviously like Incineroar's in the game, and then you had things like Chi-Yu and Chen Pao added to the game, which can just kind of blow up teams, but with Thick Fat it actually reduces that damage. So I figured like Venusaur would be pretty good. The way that people kind of used it back in the day is they would use like a Leech Seed set and like Protect, or use like Synthesis or whatever. It really kind of depends. I think the game has gotten a little bit too fast-paced for a Leech Seed to kind of really be good on it. So, like, if I were someone running this, I would actually go, like, Giga Drain and Sludge Bomb. Giga Drain still allows you to have some sort of recovery, and then you could run, like, Synthesis if you really want to. But I think, like, Sludge Bomb, Giga Drain would be really good coverage. If you really want to run Leech Seed, that's fine, but you're going to have to kind of use it more so in an endgame scenario where it's like the last 2 Pokemon are left in your opponent's team, and you have to make sure that they're not grass types. It does also happen to match up well into stuff like Raging Bolt as well, just because you do resist those electric type attacks. And if you do happen to get like a one-on-one in the end game with Raging Bolt, you could Leech Seed, Protect, and then just be like really, really annoying to it. You can maybe get a Poison with Sludge Bomb to kind of quicken up the pace of the game. So yeah, so I figured Venusaur actually like got better going into Pokemon Champions just because of the stuff that was added. Not that it necessarily is like absurdly strong or anything. It's not like a great Mega. It will be good, but it's definitely not one of the great ones. So that is probably like number 10 on the list if I had to choose. Coming in next, I would actually have Charizard X. Charizard X, it actually happens to pair well up against certain Pokemon like added. So it pairs up well against Chen Pao just because of the fire typing. And then it also has relatively nice physical bulk with 111 defense. Obviously that defense is going to be kind of dropped because of sort of ruin. But yeah, it has like good stats across the board. Its special attack is kind of wasted a little bit because you really want to use the physical Obviously, you want to go like with a physical attacker because of its ability Tough Claws, which boost its physical damage and contact moves. The way that people kind of ran Charizard was that they would go like a Dragon Dance set, and then they'll do like Flare Blitz and then Dragon Claw. That was really the big one. There were some sets that actually went more defensive and did like Will-O-Wisp, and then also did, if I remember correctly, like Roost. I wasn't really big on this set. I felt like it was too slow paced, and again, with the way that the game is shaping up now, this might just be too slow paced for how the game is developing and so on and so forth. If you do want to run one of these utility moves, I personally would run Will-O-Wisp, and then probably just like either keep Dragon Dance or just do Dragon Claw. Dragon Dance may not be necessary per se, just because you do get the physical boost with Tough Claws. And then if you really are wanting recovery, instead of running Roost, you could just run like Amoonguss next to it with Pollen Puff. And then they also pair up nicely just because Amoonguss is a grass type, Charizard is a fire type, so they could kind of switch in on each other's weaknesses pretty nicely. So yeah, like it has had success in the past, but it never really has been brought to like these amazing heights. But I do think it can pair well with like Chen Pao. It can pair well with Fluttermane because you cover the Dragon Fairy typings, and then you could just add like a Steel type on the team, like, I don't know, like maybe Golden Go, maybe Kingambit. I almost said Bisharp by mistake. But yeah, so I think Charizard X is going to be pretty decent. It'll probably be like the 9th best Mega. Going on ahead, this one might actually shock people because this Mega was not considered good back in the day. I really want to preface with that. Slowbro actually I think is going to be pretty decent. It got a major buff going into this generation. It got access to Body Press. So if you really want to, you could actually go with an Iron Defense Body Press set, and then it has a 180 defense stat. So this thing on the physical end is going to be really hard to remove because it also has access to Shell Armor, which stops critical hits from happening. So it's like, this thing is going to be actually, I think, pretty good going into Pokemon Champions, just because it got that simple buff to it. Obviously, I kind of like lost my train of thought. Obviously, like, we saw what Body Press did to Pokemon like Zamazenta going into Regulation G and Regulation I. It just made it go from like being this like bad restricted Pokemon to be actually becoming one of the best. So this actually is like a huge deal for it. There's really not much else to kind of speak about. It is a nice switch in on like Urshifu Rapid Strike. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have for it. It'd probably be around like the 8th best Mega. Next, we're going to actually have Manectric. I cannot spell Manectric. There we go. Mega Manectric. It's not that it's like amazing or anything. Like when you look at its stats, its bulk is actually like not that good. It's like really fast, hits really hard, but it does get access to Intimidate. The way that you kind of want to run it is you really want to run it with like Volt Switch and then pivot in and out with Intimidate just to kind of reduce damage output and make it more bulky. And then it also gets access to Snarl as well to kind of help out with its special defense. The reason why I have it this high on the list is because it did find success back in like 2018, and then it was used in some restricted formats for very brief periods of time. It did get second at Worlds in 2016 on Jonathan Evans' team, so like he was running Manectric, and it's just pretty good because you could pivot in and out, and it's really fast. And the thing is, its speed stat's actually really important to note because 135, it actually means that it actually speed ties with like stuff like Chen Pao and Fluttermane. So the thing is, like, at worst, you end up losing the speed tie, but since you have Intimidate, that is a big deal. You can kind of switch it in on Chen Pao if you need to. So at worst, you will be speed tying. It is a 50-50, which kind of sucks, but not the worst thing in the world. It's better than just outright, you know, just being slower than some of these really strong things that have been added to the game. It also, before it does Mega, it does get access to Lightning Rod. So if you really want to, you could actually not Mega Evolve it and then use it as like a utility switch in on stuff like Raging Bolt that uses like Thunderbolt or Thunderclap, and then you could actually get a special attack boost, then Mega Evolve, and then all of a sudden now you have a special attack boost behind a 135 special attack stat. So yeah, that I think is definitely worth noting. Now we're going to actually start getting into like what are considered to be the great Megas. The Megas that I just talked to you about now were always... well, actually not Slowbro, but most of them have been considered good for a while, but never considered great. The thing about Megas is like there really only is a handful of like 6 Megas, in my opinion, that are like truly great and truly have been at the top. going in. Obviously, we're not speaking about like Mega Rayquaza or anything. But yeah, so coming up next, I actually have Gengar. Mega Gengar, this might actually be considered a little bit too low for some people. There is a reasoning to it. Mega Gengar, for a brief period of time, I do think it was probably one of the top 3 or top 5 megas. It's slowly kind of moved down the list just because of the Pokemon added to the game that it is competing with. Like, obviously, it is competing with Flutter Mane as a ghost type on the team, and it is also competing with Golden Go, which is kind of a problem. Plus, you have things like Chen Pao, which have been added to the game, which are just naturally faster than it and can KO it. And then you also have Chi-Yu, which a lot of them are Scarf, which also can just outspeed and KO with the Scarf set. With that being said, Shadow Tag is an extremely broken ability. If people do not have a way to get around it, then that is kind of an issue, and you could actually really control games with that. It has lost value, obviously, with all those things added to the game, but it did win Worlds back in 2016, and then it got second at Worlds, I think, in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. So it still, I think, is going to be good. It's going to be viable, but you are going to have to watch out for like those new matchups that have been, or new Pokemon added to the game as far as matchups are concerned. And the other thing is like Gengar's not really the bulkiest Pokemon. It has really poor HP, like okay defense and okay special defense. And with how strong some of the things are that have been added to the game, it could just get outright KO'd, which is kind of an issue for it. But it still is worth a mention. It's had success in the past, so I don't see why not it can't have success in the future. So I figured it was worth a mention. Coming in at number 5, I actually have Mawile. Mawile, the thing is, when you look at its stats, like, it's not that impressive. You're like, oh, like, its stats are fine. What makes it really, really good is actually its ability, Huge Power. Huge Power doubles its attack stat. so it actually makes it go from, like, 105 attack to 210, which is quite insane. The thing, actually, is this the... Yeah, I think that's the right set. But yeah, so like Mawile, it's also Steel Fairy type, so like even though like it doesn't have amazing stats as far as like bulk is concerned with HP, the fact it's typing is such a good defensive type really does help it. It also gets access to priority moves, so like you could kind of make up for its really low speed stat with Sucker Punch. It gets access to Play Rough. It gets access to things like Iron Head. It's just really, really strong. Like, one of the scariest sets that I remember was like a Swords Dance set that I ran into back in like 2018, and people would just use like redirection next to it. So they'll do like Swords Dance, Sucker Punch for like priority, and then like a move like Play Rough or Iron Head or whatever. It's going to be really strong. It was actually one of the best ways to counter Mega Kangaskhan back in the year 2014, just because before it's Mega Evolved, it had the ability Intimidate. So it was a nice switching option. You'd switch it in, get an Intimidate off. With the Steel typing, it resisted Kangaskhan's normal type attacks, and it resisted Sucker Punch from it. And then you can Mega Evolve, get the Huge Power boost, and then just like start doing insane amounts of damage. So yeah, it's going to be really, really strong. Like, I think it's definitely going to be really good coming into Pokemon Champions. So figured it was worth a mention. Coming in at number 4, this might shock a lot of people because for a long time this was considered the best Mega, and for a while I did think it was the best Mega. It's actually Mega Salamence. Don't raise your pitchforks at me. All time, it is definitely the greatest Mega ever, in my opinion. It actually falls down a little bit going into Pokemon Champions just because of some of the stuff that has been added to the game, which just... it happens to match up into very poorly. Like Flutter Mane didn't do it any favors. Chen Pao didn't do it any favors. Raging Bolt didn't do it any favors. There's just like a lot of stuff that have been added to the game, which it just happens to match up against very, very poorly. Which is quite unfortunate because like it was my favorite Mega to use for a long time. Like Aerialate's a really strong ability. It takes all normal type attacks and then makes them into... flying type attack, so you get stabs, so you can run like Hyper Voice on it. Some people run like Double Edge and do a mixed attacker, and then it does get nice utility like Tailwind, and then if you don't want to do Tailwind, you could do Dragon Dance as like a setup sweeper. Another thing that people would do, sometimes they'll run like Substitute on it, so then they'll just like click sub, they won't get damaged, and yeah, it was pretty nice. But yeah, I do think it does fall down a little bit on the list just because it is competing with these other really strong Pokemon that have been added to the game. And then to add on top of that, Mega Dragonite was added to the game. I looked at Mega Dragonite stats. It's kind of like comparable to Salamence from what I saw, if I remember correctly. My memory might be a little bit off on that, but we don't know what Dragonite's ability is going to be. And if Dragonite is also Aerialate, then like Dragonite might actually end up being considered better just because it does get access to like extreme speed where Mega Salamence does not. So yeah, like that, it's kind of unfortunate. Like it was my favorite Mega to use, but it has fallen a little bit from grace just because of some of the stuff added to the game. It just matches up against so poorly. So yeah, it also matches up poorly against Golden Go too, which I totally forgot to mention. And then there's also our Chaladon as well, but yeah, not really great for Ments. Coming in at the top 3. So the next one that I actually have is Metagross. Mega Metagross, it's really, really good. Even before like this generation, like I thought it was definitely one of the better Megas for a while. It gets access to Tough Claws like Charizard X does, but it just happens to do it better. Just because its stat distribution's better than Charizard X. Like it doesn't have like too many wasted stat points into special attack. It has a really, really high attack stat, really high defense. Metagross also got access to Heavy Slam, which really helps it out as well, which is a huge buff to it. And then even before it Mega Evolves, it actually has access to Clear Body, so Intimidates from Incineroar are not going to be doing anything to it, so you could just lead it right in front of Incineroar. It's not going to be able to intimidate you. Then you just Mega Evolve, and then all of a sudden you have the Tough Claws ability. So yeah, and the other thing is it has a pretty nice defensive type with Steel Psychic. It resists a lot of different attacks. It gets also nice coverage moves, like it gets access to Ice Punch if you really don't like ground types. It gets access to Stomping Tantrum, which is really good to hit opposing steel types. So yeah, Metagross is definitely going to be like going to have huge benefits going into Pokemon Champions. Also pairs up really nicely with Chien-Pao. Chien-Pao obviously can enable it, and then with Tough Claws, this thing's going to just be knocking stuff out behind the 145 special attack stat. The thing about Metagross is, like, since its since its physical attack, that's what I meant to say, is so naturally high, and because it does have access to Tough Claws, you don't even really have to run, like, too much investment into its physical attack. Like, I remember when I ran it back in 2018, I actually would just do 4 in attack. I would max out its HP to make it as bulky as possible, and then, like, make it hit a speed stat where, if I remember correctly, like I had it outspeed Charizard Y, so I think this was the speed stat, if I remember correctly. I don't know. It might have been one more. I think it's this speed stat, and you just do 4, 4, and then you just, I think, dump into special defense. And then if you have it paired up to Chien-Pao, it even further enables its attack stat. So, yeah, this this thing's gonna be really good. I definitely don't see why it won't have like a lot of success. Plus, it also outspeeds a lot of the other Megas from prior generations, which also is really helpful for it. Like it outspeeds Charizard, it outspeeds Kangaskhan, and so on and so forth. Going on ahead, the second best Mega is actually going to be Mega Kangaskhan, which I just mentioned like 2 seconds ago. When you look at Mega Kangaskhan, it actually has a really, really good stat distribution. Nothing was really wasted in special attack. It has okay speed, decent special defense, decent defense, pretty good HP, and a really good attack stat. When you look at it, like, it looks like a pretty good Mega, but what ends up making it actually like great and really broken is its ability Parental Bond. For those of you that don't know how Parental Bond works, it actually allows a Pokemon to hit twice in one turn rather than once. So what people would run back in like 2015 was Power Up Punch Kangaskhan. For those of you that know how Power Up Punch works, it gives you an attack boost every time it is used. But since you are attacking twice in the same turn, Kangaskhan would go from having, instead of 1 stat boost in attack, to a 2 stat boost in attack. So its attack was actually doubled, which made it kind of just a threat. And then you just end up running like Return on it. It gets access to Fake Out as well, which is like really important. And then you could just run stuff like Sucker Punch or whatever. Some people did run Ice Punch to kind of beat Landorus, but yeah, like this thing it's going to be pretty good because if my memory is right, I think it actually got access to Power Up Punch again. Don't quote me on that. If it doesn't, even if it doesn't, it still would actually be the second best Mega just because of actually its ability Scrappy before it Mega Evolves, which stops it from actually getting intimidated now, which is really, really important. And now you could hit Ghost types, which is also really important as well. So just like Metagross, you can lead it right in front of stuff like Incineroar. Then you can Mega Evolve, and then obviously take huge advantage of the Parental Bond ability. With that being said, Parental Bond, it was actually so good back in 2015 and 2016 that it got nerfed going into the 2018 format. And even with that being the case, Kangaskhan in the 2019 format still got second place at the World Championship, which was a format, by the way, that had restricted Pokemon like Xerneas and Primal Groudon, Primal Kyogre. So it just really comes to show you how strong Mega Kangaskhan is. I remember back in like 2015, this thing traumatized me so much. It was so strong to the point that people started running like Rocky Helmet on stuff, like Amoonguss. Basically, like this thing was practically Urshifu before Urshifu existed. Like it was just a menace back in the day. I think it's going to be really good coming back because if my memory is correct, I think it gets access to Power Up Punch again. But even if it doesn't, it still would rank really highly on the list. The best the best Mega, in my opinion, coming in is going to be Charizard Y. Charizard Y, this might shock some of you just because it's like, when you look at its stats, it's nothing really special, like other than the special attack stat, that's actually like insane. What happened with Charizard Y is that like back in 2015, 2018, like it was always considered to be one of the best megas, like top 5, but never the best. Like I would never consider it to have cracked the top 3. But what makes it so good now is actually its ability Drought. This enables a lot of stuff that was actually added to the game the last 2 generations. Stuff like Raging Bolt now and Flutter Mane are probably going to be paired up next to Charizard Y like all the time. These things have access to photosynthesis, where their highest stat is boosted in the sun. The thing about Charizard Y is like, even though its speed is not considered like great anymore, it's fine. Flutter Mane gets access to Icy Wind, so now you can just do like Flutter Mane next to it with Focus Sash, go Icy Wind, and then just blow something up with like Overheat, which is a big deal. Raging Bolt gets a special attack boost because of Charizard in the sun. And then with that being said, Charizard could also go in many different directions with like the last 3 slots on the team. Like if you want to beat opposing Charizard teams, you could actually run Heatran. Heatran was actually a popular partner for it back in the 2015 format, just because you could use it against opposing Charizard teams. And then with Flash Fire, obviously Heatran's immune to fire type attacks. If you're not too concerned about that, you could go Ogerpon on the team, so Ogerpon Hearthflame particularly, although all the Ogerpons actually pair really nicely with it, like Ogerpon Cornerstone, Ogerpon normal form, and then Ogerpon Wellspring actually all pair nicely into it, just because Wellspring, if you do run into like one of these hard rain teams that has Prankster Rain Dance or like Tornadus, you can actually use it as like a switch-in option. But Ogerpon pairs really nicely on the team. If you want to go a Trick Room mode, perchance, you could actually absolutely throw Ursaluna on the team, and then throw on a Trick Room setter like Farigiraf, and then maybe fill out the team with like Rillaboom if you really wanted to. But yeah, there's just like so many different directions you could kind of take Charizard Y. It's not that it got like a major buff or anything going into format. In fact, I don't think it really got anything like super impressive to my knowledge, but it's just the fact that like a lot of the stuff that has been added to the game just pairs so nicely with it and it enables them so much with photosynthesis. It's just like, it shot Charizard up on my list of strongest Mega Evolutions coming back. And then for those of you that have ever like seen Torkoal in action, Torkoal is considered to be a relatively strong Pokemon. It actually won a regional in Regulation G, which is which was a format that had one restricted to each team, and it won a regional in that. So imagine Charizard Y now, where it just has way better stats. It could just do a lot more damage. So yeah, so I think Charizard Y is going to be the best. Looking at like a tier list, like this is how I'd rank it. Like the E tier is like stuff that I wouldn't even bother kind of talking about. F tier is stuff that's not like legal unless it's like a restricted format, excluding Diancie because that's a mythical. But yeah, like Venusaur 10, Charizard X9, Slowbro 8, Manectric 7, Gengar 6, Mawile 5, Salamence 4, Metagross 3, Kangaskhan 2, and then Charizard Y I think is definitely 1. So yeah, that's essentially my tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully this is helpful information. I will catch you all next time, and you all have a great day. Adios.